So this session is called Key Strategies for Moving to the Autodesk Platform, and as Gladys said, I'm going to discuss some high-level topics and get into some details about other things in the Autodesk to Bentley transition or Bentley to Autodesk transition. So just so you know who I am Scott Wolslager. I run a pre-sales engagement team at IMAGINiT. I lead a team of 7 people that are here to help understand what your desired outcomes are and make sure that we can match our vision and our solutions and our services to that strategy. I have about 31 years experience in the AEC and manufacturing spaces. I've alternated my career throughout that 31 years in both the Autodesk and Bentley platforms, and worked in both throughout my career. Actually started out in the Autodesk platform, switched to the Bentley platform, then switched back to the Autodesk platform, then switched back to the Bentley platform, and finally back in the Autodesk platform. I have a lot of comfort in working with both the technologies, and I have a lot of experience in the data management aspect of both technologies. So the agenda today is we're going to just talk a little bit about who IMAGINiT is, and then we're going to talk about the strategy, planning, challenges, and road to success, and if you're considering this transition from the Bentley platform to the Autodesk platform. So a little bit IMAGINiT, we consider ourselves our partner, a strategic partner for digital transformation services. It's the driver behind a lot of companies as to why they're leading the charge to switch from the Bentley platform today. Is they're looking at new ways of doing things and evaluating how they did things in the past. So with that, usually there's a couple things that come up. Is one is, do we do things the same way that we always done them, just in a different platform, or do we look to improve efficiency in those processes? And there's really 2 different tactics and 2 different task routes that you can take depending on which route you're going. But generally speaking, in today's world, we all want to use our data smarter and better and leverage it throughout the life cycle of the projects, especially from an owner's perspective. Is you want to use data in the smartest manner possible that you're getting from consultants, engineering firms that are working with you. We have extensive industry experience in just about every industry through our team, especially in the building and architecture areas, energy and utilities, government, space, and manufacturing and infrastructure. We support all these different industries with all our team and breadth of experience. We have over 130 technical experts throughout our organization that are dedicated to helping our customers and implement solutions. We have over 100 dedicated support staff for our technical experts and for our sales team, and over 1,000 years combined experience. We've been in business for over 35 years, and we have a 95% attach rate on our subscription renewals, which is telling of how good our quality of service is. If customers weren't happy with us, they would not renew their subscriptions with us. There's also a breadth of IMAGINiT organizations, sister companies that we work with and partner with on specific projects. So IMAGINiT is the Autodesk reseller and Autodesk services arm of the RAND organization. Ascent does all the publishing of Autodesk training content primarily. RAND 3D does PTC and Dassault training. RAND Sim does training and services around the ANSYS platform for simulation services. And then these are some other the software companies and products that we represent and include in our portfolio of expertise, including Epic Games, Leica, Archibus, PTC, and Dassault Systems. So the strategy of moving to the Autodesk platform from Bentley. So when I talk about strategy, I often talk about the analysis of the people, the process, and the technology. And there's 2 really reasons I'm hearing that most people are considering changing from one platform to another, and to my earlier point of digital transformation. And the other is to reduce the number of software titles and subscription costs to what is viewed as the same technology by a lot of managers and organizations. So with that, we need to think about the people that are using these tools. We need to think about the process that is being used by these people and what tools they're using. And finally, the technology that's being utilized and how we're going to replace that technology. This is, I think, the most important thing about the strategy part of the Bentley to Autodesk migration is the why you're doing it. Is really, I think there's probably two primary drivers behind this. One is digital transformation. We're looking at connecting our data a lot differently, and we're going to need to adjust our processes, our people, and our technology a lot to meet those demands. The other angle is, hey, we just want to start using AutoCAD instead of using MicroStation, or transition people from using MicroStation to AutoCAD as a drafting tool. And that's a much different strategy that you need to take to adopt the AutoCAD platform, for instance. Is we're just replacing a 2D drafting application with another 2D drafting application. So there, you're not really concerned about the processes so much. You're concerned about the technology and the people, because the people need to learn the technology to be able to do their jobs effectively in the new world that they're going to live in. The second thing to consider in the strategy is your requirements around legacy data. It's really easy to implement new technology when you work in a vacuum and say there's no legacy data that we need to leverage. But when there's legacy data that we need to leverage, we need to understand why. How do we reuse that data? Do we abandon certain types of data? Do we reuse certain types of data as is? Do we convert the data to whatever platform we're going to? So if we're switching from MicroStation DGN files to Autodesk DWG files, is conversion necessary of those files, or is it not necessary? How many versions of those files do we need to go back and save? Want to make decisions on these types of requirements really early in the project so that you can plan for these accordingly. Legacy processes are also very important. So understanding mission and critical processes that are in place today that you need to make sure that are replaceable with the new technology that you put in place. So, maybe you have GIS integration with your Bentley environment today that sends utility data over to your ArcGIS platform from the Bentley platform. Well, that's a critical process that you need to make sure you take the time to map out how that process is going to be accomplished in the new platform as well. And then also consider things just because we've always done it that way, and think about new ways that you could approach things, tackle problems, leverage technology different. And that goes back to the strategy. Are we just converting a drafting tool, or are we converting our processes and our business to leverage digital data in a different manner and leverage data in a whole new manner? Let's talk about a little bit about the planning part of this project, if you choose to undertake it. So planning, the critical thing here, I think, is budget, is identifying the budget that you have to make this conversion. And there's lots of different ways that people go about justifying budget and understanding budget, but this is not necessarily just outside resources, but inside resource demands that you need to make this conversion successful. So budget, you can consider, hey, we're trying to reduce our Bentley spend by $1 million a year in our subscription costs. Well, if we can do that and we can achieve that by this time next year, we can reduce that $1 million, and that could maybe perhaps establish some budget money and some guidelines around that. Resources, understanding your internal resource demand to achieve the strategies that you're putting in place. So if we're looking at, hey, we need to convert every existing DGN file to DWG, what's the resources required to do that, and how are we going to do that? And that takes some planning to coordinate effort amongst your team, or if you're going to include outsourced partners like perhaps IMAGINiT, resource demand on our team as well. This is probably the most challenging thing to do in an Autodesk to Bentley conversion process, because you need to consider file migration, you need to consider training, you need to consider testing, you need to consider implementation and all the setup that you need to do. So timeline will help define the resources as well. So if you only have a 6-month timeline to make this transition, your resource demand may be higher than if you had a 12-month timeline to transition the Bentley conversion process. This is critical from an executive management standpoint and a management standpoint to understand their timeline and their desire, because if we don't all get on the same page at the beginning of this process as to the timeline, we have a great chance of missing expectations and understanding the full scope of the project. Training is another aspect of this, that there's oftentimes not a good plan in place to train users on the Autodesk platform and new workflows that are being put in place. So I always explain to people today, in today's world, there's lots of different ways to train people. We have online learning methods, we have in-person learning methods, you have all sorts of resources out in the internet that you can leverage. However, making sure that people are trained in the time that they were going to actually move to the new platform and actually start utilizing the new platform is everything. So you don't want to train users 6 months prior to them having the tools to be able to start using. It has to be just-in-time training, and it has to be targeted at their workflows so that they know that we understand what they were doing every day, and that here's the new workflow and new processes that you need to follow to do your current job duties within your organization. In order to do that, you must do testing to make sure that those processes work, so that the users are confident that when they start using the tools that they can be successful at it. We always say that people can make technology projects fail pretty easily if they would like to, and generally technology projects fail because planning wasn't done correctly, training wasn't done correctly, and the implementation was not bought in by the general user community within the organization, or perhaps even the management team was not encouraged in the learning and objectives that you were trying to accomplish at the beginning of this project. So again, enforce the strategy through the planning process and make sure you plan out all the tasks that need to be done. And those tasks could be endless in some ways, but here's some samples, tasks that you may include in that planning exercise. We need to understand our current CAD standards, and if they exist, and how well they were followed perhaps in the past. We need to understand what CAD processes and workflows are critical, mission critical business processes that we cannot miss, and we have to make sure that we have replacements for in the new platforms. We have to understand how we manage data in the past. And some of these projects are more complex than others, as if you're migrating also from, say, the ProjectWise environment to the Autodesk Construction Cloud or Autodesk Vault or something like that, is how are we going to migrate all that metadata and data from the ProjectWise environment over to whatever platform that you plan on managing that data into the future. And this could consider things like, hey, do we want all our old versions of documents? Do we only need the most recent version of the document and the new version if it was converted to the AutoCAD platform, for instance? So you want to make sure that you create a comprehensive plan around that particular task, especially with CAD standards and data management. Then the drawing translations part is also a planning exercise, is understanding what drawings that you currently have in your system that may be required to migrate to the AutoCAD platform, or do we just leave them in place as is, as DGNs, and convert them as we need them throughout the projects that we undertake in the future. This is really a decision on the organization's part of whether or not you need to have all the files translated, or you need to just start fresh and start working in the AutoCAD platform and convert files as you go. If you deal with legacy data a lot, legacy data can be really messy, especially if it's 30 years old and you open a 30-year-old CAD file. It probably doesn't follow your new CAD standards. It might follow some standard from 30 years ago. So understanding how we're going to adapt those drawing translations, if we're doing them, into a new CAD standard, create our templates and things that we need to in the Autodesk platform that mimic or are similar to our Bentley platform, so it's not too disruptive for the users. And then supplying the users education on their workflows and how they are going to do their current job responsibilities in the new software applications that they are utilizing. And then ultimately, you still need to support those users for a period of time, probably 6 to 12 months after this transition of learning objectives and understanding new processes and continuing to develop their skills on the new platform. If they used Bentley products for 25 years, it's like riding a bike in some ways, is that they know how to use the Bentley software, but the Autodesk software is going to be new to them, and they need to have some support and have someone to ask questions to at the end of the day. So some of the challenge that we see, and I've seen over the years of doing this, is legacy data is definitely the biggest challenge. And when I say legacy data, I'm lumping that into really two categories. One is the data management aspect of document management systems that are in place and all the data, rich data that is stored in there. And then also the CAD files that we publish for construction or publish for internal purposes as well. If we need that legacy data and we want to convert it, deciding how we're going to convert it in the layer tables to level translations and fonts and dimension styles and text styles and all that technical detail really needs to be worked out so that you process things in a systematic way and move the data in a smart way that can be reused in the new platforms. The document management system part of the migrations is generally a little bit more challenging because we have so much legacy data and metadata associated with every file in every version of file that we need to consider what data should we abandon, is not really usable anymore. Maybe you put a timeline in it. Is any data that's over 10 years old and hasn't been touched? And do we really need to migrate that if it hasn't been touched in 10 years? Or do we just need to archive that data and make sure that we have it on our network somewhere, but we don't really need it in a new data management platform or something like that? Legacy processes is, getting people to do things differently is challenging sometimes. And in a process that you may have followed in the MicroStation or in Bentley products, may be slightly different in the Autodesk solutions. Generally speaking, they're kind of a one-to-one as far as software capabilities and things, but the processes are different. So, trying to get yourself out of doing a routine that you've always done this way is difficult to change after years of doing something. So making sure that people are aware that they may need to change the way they do some things, and make sure that they understand the why that we're changing the way that we're doing some things, because we're trying to enforce a digital transformation. We're trying to create a digital twin of data, or we're trying to make sure that data stays continuous throughout the life cycle of the project, whatever the case may be. Budget is also a challenge for some organizations. Is if you don't budget for this properly, it's pretty easy to miss expectations as far as time or the amount of money that it's going to cost to internal resources or external resources from a budgeting standpoint of what's going to happen with this project-wise data, or what's going to happen with all this legacy data. Making sure that you have a realistic budget is really important to these types of projects. Time is also a challenge. I've been in a couple of situations where customers have come to us and said, "Hey, our Bentley contract expires in 3 months. We want to convert everything in 3 months to the Autodesk platform." Well, time is the essence there. It's really difficult to accomplish that type of task when you have an organization of 500 people that are all using Bentley software right now. How can we actually do that in a 3-month time frame is probably not realistic. And that's why my last item there is realistic expectations, is understanding the magnitude of what you're trying to undertake. And converting a company from, that's 5 users of Bentley software to Autodesk is a lot different than converting an organization of 500 or 1,000 users or more to the Autodesk platform from Bentley. And those mixed environments also pose other challenges, as in some cases, customers have, I've been in this situation where we had lots of Autodesk projects and lots of Bentley projects within the organization, and we really had 2 teams, people that worked on primarily Autodesk projects types because of customer demand, and then the other team worked on Bentley projects because of the customer demand. Well, we need to merge those two technologies and those two processes and those two types of disciplines now into one cohesive strategy and make sure that we have, again, realistic expectations as to what can be done and what can't be done. That is all I had to really cover today. I'm really thankful for everybody's attention and time. If anybody has any questions, you're welcome to type them into the chat window, and I will take any questions that people may have.